The views and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the position of the management and staff of Guardian Network.
September 1st, 2019, he brought surge, wind and rain.
Good morning and welcome to Guardian Radio AM. This is C.A. Newry and I shall be your guest for today as we talk about hurricanes. Right now we know there's a tropical storm out there and it's not close to Nassau per se, but it's given some threat to Grand Bahama yet again, and given some threat to the Abacos yet again, and day after warning. I know my child's school today is ending school at 12 noon, and I have to rush there now and pick her up and make sure she's safe. And I want to know your hurricane story. And I want to hear some recommendations on what should we look out for during a hurricane. You know, we kind of prepare for hurricanes, but not really. I was driving here today and I saw nobody rushing to the food stores. Maybe because each one of us broke. But I saw nobody putting up any storm shelters. You know, and surely we have that stash someplace that we can pull that out at any time. And I want to know, like, why? Why do you think nobody's concerned about this, right? Or did this storm caught us last minute? You know, like yesterday it was nothing, and all of a sudden you hear, oh, there's a tropical storm, and by tomorrow it's going to be Hurricane 1, you know? And so we are perplexed and bewildered and wondering, say, what storm? You know, there has not been much cancellation of jobs. I know I have to go to work tonight, right? And they said, no, work as usual. And I said, but you didn't hear there's a hurricane coming? You know, so I want to know what's happening out there. Are people preparing? Are people going to be battering up? Are people going to be looking out, watching this hurricane? I see the Deputy Prime Minister gave a speech and said, now we're going to have to take this storm seriously. Right? I see NEMA is out on watch and saying, hey, we are taking this storm seriously. And I want to know, what exactly does seriously mean? Right? And since the storm is threatening Grand Bahama and they've been going through storm, and of course it's threatening Abaco, and those people still have their emotions about them due to the last storm. I'd like to know, like, when they hear the word hurricane, when they hear the word tropical storm, what type of emotions is evoked in them? You know, I personally I'm used to hurricanes. You know, I've had one or two bad ones where some trees fell down and being out of electricity for a week or so. But in terms of devastating and terrifying, I've never had one like that. Right? So I tend to temper my reaction to hurricane, and I don't get concerned until they say Hurricane 3, and that's nothing something to be bragging about. That's something to be ashamed about. In fact, right, that I don't take any hurricane seriously until they say Hurricane 3, and I think I've been conditioned to that because hurricane life is a part of my daily life. I expect hurricane to come. One is a lot of rain. Right? Two, serious, don't go outside, you know, expect some flooding. Three, anything to happen, and you know, and you don't want to go outside. But I see for the next 2 days, there's going to be some type of lunar eclipse, right? And people are throwing words around like red moon, king tide, spring tide, and I'm not sure if any of that is going to be happening for this hurricane. But I know that the moon impacts the waves and the tide, right? And I know what happened to the last spring tide and last king tide and the flooding. So I am a bit concerned that a hurricane is coming at this particular time, right? And say, great show as usual. I have a text here already. Said that's not so. At least they're commenting on the food store not crowded. The food store was full yesterday, and the shelves are almost empty. See, someone out there is having a different experience. They're saying that Bahamians are preparing. They are getting their hurricane snacks and foods now, and that the food stores are empty. People are preparing for it, right? You don't take hurricane serious until it's Cat 3. You too old to be practicing foolishness, and I find I don't. And mind you, there are always canned items in my house, right? I live on top of a mound, not necessarily a hill, so we don't have that flooding experience at all. And so it normally be rain or wind. I know one of the hurricanes we had here, there was no rain. There was no rain, and there was a lot of wind and stripping of the trees. So when that hurricane passed, I remember everything was just brown and dreary, right? But there was no much flooding at all regarding that. But I remember, and I don't remember the hurricane name, but this is definitely in the 2000s, when the government told people to evacuate from Yamacraw Estates. And what that area is out south, Marshall Road area. And a number of persons said, man, the hurricane couldn't be that bad. But I remember there was flooding. I mean, real flooding. I had a friend, Tamiko, you wouldn't mind calling his name, right? Who, there was never much flooding in Yamacraw, right? And I remember, we shooting the breeze. Everyone who I knew was on social media, and we were blogging back and forth about the rain for the hurricane. And then there was a clarion call from Tamiko who said that he is stuck in his house and that the water has moved from the beach, from Yamacraw Beach, and has come over the mound onto the main road, and that he is afraid for his life, and that things were floating in his house. And then he made the decision to brave the hurricane and walked out from Yamacraw Beach Estates, and walked to the main road, Foxhill. And one of his friends heard his plea, and it was said on the radio, and they went to save him. And I mean, I was terrified because Tamiko's a good guy, and I said, I didn't know water could reach this far. So I only could imagine what happened in Abaco. I only could imagine what happened in Grand Bahama. And I know that as a part of the narrative, no one mentioned whether the water that came in, especially in Abaco, even in Grand Bahama, where places never flooded before, that eventually had 6 feet of water coming to dry land. Was that a tsunami? And mind you, it's not a part of our narrative in terms of explaining what exactly happened, right? But I sincerely believe that this was no regular flooding, especially how we have scores of people who are missing to this day, lost to us. No record of where they gone. The water came and sucked them back out to sea. Surely, during Hurricane Dorian, that had to be a tsunami of some sort. And if it was a tsunami of some sort, right? And again, like I said, it's not a part of our official narrative of what happened. But if it was a tsunami, surely our government has a duty of care to warn us that tsunamis are possible. Explain what tsunamis are. explain how far the water would come, explain what the danger of it, and like I said, that's not really a part of our narrative, right? Still, like 3 years later, there is no center in Abaco where hurricane shelter in Abaco where persons can go and be safe, right? You see, they are asking, our government is already telling people from Sweeting's Key, Grand Bahama, and some of the islands there that they need to evacuate, right? And when I say evacuate, I always just want to evacuate and go where? What do they want these people to do, right? Do we have facilities? Because I realize that a number of us tend to shelter in the church, and we saw that the last hurricane, when there was a long period, extended period of people sheltering in the community centers, particularly in the one in Fox Hill, we realized that the community center could not take, especially the septic system, could not take that constant use, that constant abuse, the chafing. And I wonder if these churches can take that continuous flushing of a large number of people inside the church for an extended period of time. How prepared are we? How much trust do we have in NEMA? Mind you, NEMA is our only refuge in terms of a national response, right? But when you think of a response by the government and you say, well, I feel safe, I feel that this entity is going to come and save me if things go awry. I want to know, if do you trust NEMA? Do you believe that they have the competence? Do you believe that they have the coordination skills to manage the police force, the defense force, to mobilize the telco, the utility system, and get life back into order? So I see I have another text here that says, it was Hurricane Matthew with all that flooding in Yamacraw. The ocean water was chest deep in the road. Ask me how I know. And I'll ask you, how do you know? Because more like you was in that water. And like I said, what caused the ocean, right, which was miles away from Yamacraw Beach, the road itself, right, to come up and get chest deep? You know how far the water had to come to do that? You know? And I see people saying that it was some kind of storm surge that caused that, right? Another text says, great show as usual. The government can't explain when they're going on a trip, and you want them to explain a tsunami. Man, it's a new day. And I believe that new things are coming, and I expect great things. That's why we as a Bahamian people, need to cheer on our government when they're doing a great job, and to critique them when you think that more can be done. And this text says, NEMA is far too panicky and alarmist to my liking. And mind you, hurricanes are serious, and we are in that hurricane belt, and we know that the Prime Minister is at that COP 27 now, talking about climate change and the impact of climate change to the Bahamas, right? So I expect NEMA to be kind of panicky, you know. I expect NEMA to react quickly and say, we need to do this, we need to do that. But I always wonder, if a Category 2 to Category 3 storm hits New Providence, and there's extensive amount of damage, especially in the entire utilities system, can we bounce back quick enough? And when I say bounce back quick enough, to bounce back within the year? Can we render services to the family island, or we will be at a detriment? Right? I see I have a caller here, and patch that caller through, so I have conversation to them. Here, what is the last hurricane they've been through? Do they think that we're prepared? What should we be doing now? What should the nation be doing now? What do you recommend to the government? Go ahead, caller. Thanks for calling Guardian Radio AM.
Hey, Newry, what's up, brother?
It's good to hear your voice again, man. What you saying?
Hey, listen, let me do some politics thing again between me and you, okay? So for those people who feel like if I say something or you say something, man, you say it, and I respect you as a man, bro. I move on. But in preparation for this storm, right, people just can't depend on you, Mr. Newry. You got to depend on yourself. See, every day from this, we've been getting these watch. You have persons like yourself, other talk show hosts, the radio, the media, giving the message. I think it was the Deputy Prime Minister. He had he spoke last night on it. So what else is there for you to do? All right, and it's so sad, Mr. Newry, is that I am so I don't even know the word to explain with those persons in Abaco. You know, I'm sorry for them, man. But them clapboard house and shantytown and things, you know, they just get affected, man. And it's like, the more the hurricanes come, the more they build back. But I can say this to you in closing, you know, Mr. Newry.
Mm-hmm.
God, not me, not you, not the government, all right, not the ministers, not NEMA, speaking in Abaco, Mr. Newry, in those areas. All right? Now, however you dissect that.
You know I can let you go with that and just without engaging you. So why don't wait one time and wait till I ask my question?
Let's go, Mr. Newry, let's go. The opportunity, like I said to you yesterday, when we had a chance to cleanse the earth, you know, the hurricane came, you know, God forbid that things happen to people's family. I sorry about that. But that was the chance to cleanse the earth.
And what do you mean by cleanse the earth, do it?
Clean the earth, clean the mud. Come on, Mr. Newry, you know you can't say certain things on the radio, right?
Then you're talking code so I can understand, though.
We know the history of the mud.
Mm-hmm.
We know the history of certain parts of Abaco when it comes to this evil force, but I don't want to get into that.
No, this is a good topic. And you believe that there is some type of evil force
Of course.
that in Abaco that's causing hurricanes to come there and try to cleanse that area.
Listen to me, Mr. Newry. I can tell you what I tell my fiance this morning. Y'all in Abaco building them out, y'all ain't seen nothing yet. All right? That one would come and wipe out the mud. That was a warning for y'all to take heed. Okay, since the government even knocked the house them down, what the saying say? I'd huff and I'd puff and I'd blow your house down. Watch it.
And you believe God is doing that?
Listen to me. Abaco is plague. You know, let me say this to you. I have a friend, got his papers and everything. He said to me, he said, DeWitt, you know what? The government ain't got to knock them. They don't have to knock them down. The hurricane, Mother Nature, and God can knock them down. Watch it. Have a good day and be safe, my brother. You watch how this can play out.
I can watch, you know. I'm now more concerned about Grand Bahama. Because now if you're saying that some kind of evil force in Abaco causing all these things to happen, and now I wonder how evil Grand Bahama is that every other year they get. Or you don't mean Grand Bahama?
I'm not going far as talking about Grand Bahama.
Grand Bahama's an exception, you said?
I am talking about the mud. Abaco.
Only Abaco. Even though Grand Bahama get hurricane after hurricane, no evilness there. There's only evilness in Abaco.
I understand that. But what I am saying to you, right? What I am saying to you, watch how this can play out with them shanty down. Watch it, Mr. Newry. Watch it. And when it play out, what I want you to do, we can sit down and we can have some lunch. What do you say?
Yeah, man, I like free lunch.
No, lunch on you.
What?
You're wrong.
It looked like I ain't showing up then. I messed it up. Man, I always enjoy talking to you. I have some text here. Says, great show as usual. That's not so... No, I already read that. Okay, let me scan. We all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. DeWitt forgot all these killing and darkness going on in New Providence. So by DeWitt's explanation, ain't long now for New Providence. We need to very fast and pray. Because some sinister stuff, some evil stuff is happening in New Providence, and DeWitt saying basically that Abaco is plagued, right, to go through certain things continuously because there's some wickedness happening in Abaco. That's what he suggested, right? So the next text said, DeWitt is irresponsible for his statement. Regardless of what those people are doing, they are still human beings. DeWitt saying God doing it. So you know how that goes. And this next says, I trust Nima more than I trust Basil Dean. Please don't let Basil predict the weather. We might all die. He's always wrong. And Basil don't always be wrong, you know. I think that the weather system changes. And as the weather system changes, his prediction changes. So that's how it is, right? I have this next text right here, which says, good morning, my brother. My brother was recently transferred to Abaco as a teacher. He is not from Abaco, and he has an open ticket to return to New Providence. But there are no flights available. He wanted to leave from yesterday. The government should have arranged for additional flights to be sent to evacuate those people who wanted to pay for a ticket to leave. And that's interesting. I mean, if I think that Bahamas Air and the other airlines are for profit, and they definitely are willing to make a profit. And so it's kind of strange to me that there are no available flights for people to evacuate. And then I will quicken to analyze your text and say, whose duty is it to evacuate the people? If our government announced that you need to evacuate, surely you should take it upon yourself to move. And it's not necessarily the government's jobs to move you and to house you. I know now that the last administration enacted some type of law to make it mandatory for you to evacuate when they put the evacuation notice, and that you are subject to some type of arrest if you do not evacuate when that notice is given. And that's because of, I assume, those people who refuse to move in the mud and the pigeon pea during the last hurricane. And I would like to speak about that since DeWitt put it inside the narrative. What duty of care does our government have for the people who live in shanties? And not just the shanties in Abaco, I mean, in terms of hurricanes and evacuation and when the big storm is coming. And I'm asking about the duty of care there. Should they assist in the housing? It's like, because we know a number of these persons are impoverished or financially challenged, right? So when the order said, bring your own food, bring your own lantern and entertainment, you cannot expect poor people to have more than 1 day, 2 days worth of food to use, right? So if it's a long period of time for them to be housed, surely it's a duty of care to the government or a duty of care to the church to come there and say, here, we have these type of food and to replenish what you had before. But I see I have another caller there. Producer, patch that caller through as we talk about what should we be doing during the hurricane. Are we prepared as a nation? Is Abaco prepared? Is Grand Bahama prepared? What are they doing for the evacuation? But go ahead, caller.
Currently, there's Starkin Voice along with you, Newry.
I'm doing well, man. How you doing today?
Well, we need justice, law, and order in this country. As long as we don't have justice, law, and order, things ain't going to be right.
Yes, definitely.
Other than having Christ Jesus, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
You have Christ Jesus, you got everything. But what I want to say to you, right? I listened to you and DeWitt talking, right? And DeWitt surprised me. Every year has a season. There are 4 seasons in the year. If you look at your calendar, you would see that. Okay? The thing is, just like how certain fruits come in season every year, it's the same thing with the weather. Mightn't be here every year, but it would be different places. Okay? So to say, talk about evil are everywhere. The thing is, people have to live. Have to know to live among the evil. Okay? So I don't agree with you and DeWitt were talking about. What government should be doing, right? Hello?
I'm here, man. What's listening?
Knowing that for what government experienced or what the Bahamas experienced, the last hurricane we had, what government should have done or should be doing, getting on every island and taking the name of people, knowing how many people on each island. And not only that, don't open a gate or flood gate for people to go in that island different from what you have registered. Okay? If anything were to happen to any of those island people or any of those islands, you would know who is who who were missing and whatever. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, man, I
That's
understand.
what they should do, and nobody are doing it. Our people that run this country are short-sighted. Thank you.
Thanks, man, Bremen. I appreciate that. I have a text here which says, Bahamas, humble yourself and pray. Turn from your wicked ways, and God will protect you through the storms and plagues. He said, next text say, I am in my farm protecting the base of my trees. The winds may mess up the top limbs, but once the base is down to the roots are protected and reinforced, they will grow back. And that's what their person is doing at this present time. Great show as usual. A question is, why are we always looking for government to help us during hurricane? I think we at some point should help ourselves. And granted, I expect us to help ourselves, right? But that's what we vote the government for. And that's why I pay my taxes, to have general help. I expect the drains to be cleared. We know the hurricane coming. At least make sure you have a day. Clear some, if not all the drains. We know we have the limbs over the electrical wires. Cut down the electrical wires. At least do that. We know we have a lot of debris and old cars about. Move that. I'll be grateful for that. And then perhaps I can take care of myself with everything else. But at least do that basic, right? Right? Like, do you expect the electricity cut off when the wind start blowing at 50, 60 miles per hour, the older band, right in New Providence? Or you think that BPL will brave us through the storm and be able to be on Facebook and talk about what's happening and questioning what is happening in Abaco? I remember that Telco had a good connection, or I was alive. One of them. I'll give credit to both. When one phone company went off, we in New Providence could have communicated to people in Abaco and get updates, especially when they had that storm stopped over them, and we started to panic when the storm stopped moving altogether. But anyway, I have another caller there. Patch the caller through there, producer.
Yes, this is from Newry, Alan Johnson. Chris.
Go ahead, Alan.
Yeah. I'm wondering when we can stop pretending that we are doing anything at all. It's almost like watching when I saw my daughters growing up, watching them play house, pretending to cook.
Alan, you there? You get cut? Alan, you had a bad connection. If you can call back, I would like to hear what you had to say. So you call back, and hopefully that connection is much better. Patch the next caller through.
Hello.
Go ahead, caller.
Good morning, Mr. Newry.
How you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right. Great show. You have some good discussions, man. I listen to you all the time. Listen, man, Mr. Newry. The thing is, I do a lot of observations, right? And so a hurricane basically is just a cooling system. It's the creative way of cooling the earth. And so I kind of disagree with what David was saying, even though what is to be will be. But our level of consciousness and our level of knowledge guides us to our encounters. So if you're not conscious, it's just like Aaron and Mark Palmer was talking about things that some people are not conscious about. Even the plants and animals have a level of consciousness that we don't have. So what happens is, I'm not going to sit and say, well, we know it's good and evil, but the thing is, I watch plants die. I pray for the plants, the avocados stay on the trees, et cetera, the juju to stay on the trees. This is what I ask God for, simple things, and I pray for things I cannot pray for themselves. Mm-hmm. But for me to sit and say, it's evil, and David could be right, but it is what has to be will be. God give me and you the brains to guide ourselves to our encounters. That is what life is. If you're not conscious about something, then you would not know. The same thing, like I heard you talk about tsunami. Now, it was not a tsunami. First, let's ask you a question from basic O-level geography. Do you know why the eye of the hurricane is calm?
Because the wind go in a different circular motion of some sort?
Yes, but it's in a circle. But the system is circular, but the air is descending. Mm-hmm. It's going downwards. So it exerts a downward pressure. That is when they say barometric pressure. So that means the lower the pressure, the more force it exerts on the ocean, in the waters. So then that means the higher the water rises. It's like you put the egg in the jar and the water rises. So scientists and people who have studied the weather, they could predict the surges. So that's all that really was. So because the storm sat there for so long and it had a low pressure, the surge is higher. So that's just simple geography. It's nothing to do. I mean, it's all God's creation, but it's a way of cooling the earth. So the storms are guided by difference in temperature and pressure. The high pressure trough to the north, this amount of pressure to the south. You see the ice about. All of those numbers mean something. So we're not conscious. Even some people right now, the storm is making, 50 miles an hour. You have a lot of people running around scared. They don't even understand, basically. I mean, it could do damage to the trees, et cetera, and some slight damage here. But we have to give thanks and praises. And I don't care how much it's making. I still just give thanks. I ain't living in no fear. God made these hurricanes. Humans are very selfish, We have been living and recording. We have been recording hurricanes for less than maybe 150 years. And so we feel as if Dorian was the most powerful storm. Come on, man. They got storms make more than Dorian, man. But Dorian sat in its position for so long because different atmospheric pressures and temperatures caused it to stay where it was. This is God's creation. Give thanks, man.
Okay, thank you very much. I was going to ask you if you believe in the harp machine, but you hang up, so I couldn't ask you that. And I see Alan didn't call back, so hopefully he'll call back again. Anyway, the text says, it was the fact that Matthew came from the south of Nassau, pushing the ocean water inland, along with the storm surge that made the flooding so bad. But I do not think the government is ready to deal with this storm. Not enough branches have been trimmed, etc. Right? And mind you, I've seen the Batelco, no, that's BPL, Bahamas Power and Light, who are out there cutting trees. So I've seen them, right? So they're making some effort, right? But I've even seen 1 or 2 drains have been cleared. And I know that even in Alfred Sayers community, you see that they're trying to alleviate some flooding there in terms of enacting some drains there. But in terms of a national psyche of dealing with hurricanes, I'm not convinced that we are emotionally prepared for any major hurricane. And when I say we, I'm talking about New Providence mostly because if the center, it has major damage, the whole country will feel the impact of that. And I don't believe our psyche has come to the point where we said, hey, this is a hurricane. These are the things that we do. You can't just get 1 or 2 batteries. You can't get 1 or 2 flashlights. You can't just have hurricane snacks. We got to prepare for a long period of time. And I remember I when I was in school in the States for a brief time, I think that was Gilbert. This was early 90s, mid 90s. No, it was earlier than that, early 90s. And where we lived in Overtown, we was without light going on 3 weeks. It was rough. And where the apartment complex where we were living in, the electricity. Oh, there's a national alert. Look at that. Let me turn that off. I see we have a national alert system now where they sending things on the phone. That's a strange alarm. I never heard that before. But anyway, we was out electricity and water for 3 weeks, and I'm not sure if Bahamians are prepared to be without electricity for any large extended period of time. That's when you know that you're going through a crisis and that you're ill-prepared. And I think that we need to start having that conversation on what can you do? What would you do if you don't have electricity for a week, more than a week, right? You don't have access to running water for more than a week. Where do you go to find these resources so you to survive? But I see you have another telephone call there. Patch the caller through there.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, how you doing?
Welcome back, C. Allen. Go ahead, what you saying?
Hey, how you doing? We don't have any hurricane preparedness, Newry. It's not on Grand Bahama, wasn't before it is now, neither on Abaco. In fact, between Abaco and Grand Bahama, I know of one certified hurricane shelter, which is the Church of God of Prophecy in Pinedale, in 8 Mile Rock, and one being built by the Seventh-day Adventist Church. The rest of them are places of huddling that is supposed to be less prone to impact than the people whom they are leaving. But when you speak about New Providence, do you know, Cecil, that there's a law that demands that hurricane strategies for the Bahamas be developed and published every year?
What? There's laws for that?
Yeah, the same NEMA law.
So we look like we're breaking that law then. Absolutely. Because I don't understand exactly what is our plan. What are the yeah, go ahead.
We've been breaking it since its inception by the same leader. Because, for instance, what is the strategy for when or if New Providence is hit? what is the strategy for moving government or something of that sort so we can function? Because Nassau, you consider what happened to Abaco and what happened to Grand Bahama. How do you think New Providence would fare from a Category 3, 4, 5 hurricane coming across the 5 by 27? And so what is the strategy? When you say move people into shelters, move them to where? When you have an island like Grand Bahama, at its widest point, we do have 27 miles, but where people live is no more than 3, 4, 5 miles wide. And so any water would transpose the entire island. So where do you move them to? Another island, 60,000 individuals, etc. And so here it is that we're going, almost on 2 decades now, or at least 15 plus years for NEMA, and not one strategy for the Bahamas has been published.
So let me interject right here. Give me 2 things. Don't give me 3. 3 things you think we should be doing. What our government should be doing in terms of a hurricane strategy.
The first thing is that we should actually have an emergency response from government where there's something called where government puts the team in, not the talking heads that we normally have, and depending on churches and other places, an actual response for, first of all, for governance that happens, whether it be on the islands or for the country. Utilizing technology. I hear about the satellite phones and all of these different things. As a technologist, this is not the time for me to go into the full detail of the effectiveness of those environments. But we should also have places, the strategy for movement of people, but more in sync is that we should have multiple places across this archipelago where we can actually have people to go to be safe. Hopefully,
Let me have you pause there because I don't understand what you mean by that. Places for them to be
hurricane
safe.
shelters.
Do we have? We don't have a national hurricane shelter throughout the whole Bahamas. There's nothing.
No, that's absolutely no. I mean, even so, you have like St. Barnabas and other places.
No, that's a church.
No, I understand. That's what I'm saying to you. That one actually, see, that if you go to look at the hurricane shelters, look for those things that actually have they have this little sign designated to meet certain qualifications. St. Barnabas doesn't meet that anymore. What I'm simply saying is that we have to have national hurricane shelters. We also have to have 21st century type integration of multiple agencies, not the reactive type environment. I mean, we have the possibility of doing it right now if we have a sensible conversation concerning this new carbon economy and the billions of dollars that's available, as opposed to say we're gonna be selling bullets alone so that people could continue shooting at us, so we can get money, as opposed to utilizing our resources. I've often said on the show and other shows that even the natural resources we have, not the exploitation the way these political parties speak of it, but actually a sovereign wealth fund and a sovereign asset management company. Just used as an example, and you say we lack, and the first thing people say is we don't have the resources, we're a small country, we're broke. But without going to the beggar nations, we actually have within our purview almost, let's say, 1 million acres of crown land. If you were to actually look at the value of those 1 million acres across, including the seabeds and everything, we could easily put 50,000 acres of those into a sovereign wealth fund, then transfer to sovereign.
But see, you're losing me now, Allen. But let me be more specific, so you can be.
50,000 acres. Let me just make this point. 50,000 acres at $300,000 is $15 billion raising. Okay, I'm simply saying is we're not lacking funding. What we're lacking is leadership that understands the 21st century and innovation to deal with the issues that is pressing us now and into the future. Go ahead, your question.
When you think, say, hurricane shelter, right? How many people do you think it should be able to house? I'll call it an island like Exuma, which is booming now. The deputy prime minister was going to do all kind of tourists to come there and all kind of money there. Go ahead.
But hurricane shelters, not only the shelters, but it's also purpose-built buildings, including hotels and other whatever it is that we build. But we should be prepared at any given moment to house at least 30% of any of our island population in an environment for safety. And this involves also, even from the inland, when you begin to look at our construction and building purpose-built building. For instance, if you have purpose-built building where the first floor is a common area, but it's purpose-built from second, third, whatever floor to withstand certain categories of hurricane. And so you can have these scattered throughout the island and also a type of response. And so the problem is that we've never had any type of real conversation since NEMA was enacted as to what is the strategy, say, for emergency response. And you say you have a CERT program, a community emergency response team. You have a disaster assessment recovery team, and all these various different acronyms that they use in the environment. None of these exist. I mean, this is not rocket science for us that we're trying to say this is new way of developing. Countries around the world that are in hurricane as well as typhoon zones and other things already have tackled some of these problems that we are facing. The problem is that we often come with excuses of using these benchmarks that we would say, well, in this country they don't do it, and if you want to make a point, we use the country. If you want to make another point, we use another country, as opposed to utilizing this concept of success. Success is how well you have done based on what you are capable of doing, not how well you have done based on how bad somebody else is.
So in the long and short, you're saying that we need to do more, and the government isn't responding to our needs at this present time.
Two things we have to do. We have to actually begin to accept where we are, or simply pack up.
And where are we?
That's what I'm saying to you, in the pathway of Hurricane Alley, or just pack up and let's move to Bahamas to another place.
So we got to accept that we're in the hurricane belt and that things need to be done. We need to have a mass exercise of building hurricane shelters in 3, 4, 5 islands at the same time. We can't be just building one.
No, right. But I'm saying, but first of all, we need no more plans and no more ideas. Plans and ideas are not actual strategies. And what I'm simply saying is that we have plenty ideas and plenty plans, but we have no written, executable strategies as to what we have to do, which will then require us to first assess the problem to then proper the solution. And so what we have is we have 5-year celebrities with 5-year plans. When we say the Bahamas is going to be here for the next 50 years if global warming don't continue, then let's plan for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years beyond the 5-year celebrities as to the issues that will be facing us today as well as tomorrow. And we have the people, these young people right now, if you prepare them today, you'll be surprised at what they get capable of doing tomorrow.
I appreciate you, Seattle. We're going to take a commercial break here. And thanks very much for calling. This has been Guardian Radio AM with C.A. Newry, and we're going to take a short commercial break right now.
If you'd like to...
Zoom was just a sound effect? When your living room wasn't your gym? When a cough didn't scare people away? That was the good old days. And thankfully, they are coming back. As things return to normal, remember it is essential to be fully immunized against all vaccine-preventable diseases like COVID-19, diphtheria, tetanus, measles, and influenza. This message is brought to you by PAHO WHO, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, the Caribbean Development Bank, the Government of Canada, and the United States of America.
The Project Execution Unit of the Ministry of Finance hereby advises that due to inclement weather, the e-mobility workshop scheduled for Tuesday, November 8th, 2022 has been rescheduled to Thursday, November 10th, 2022 at 2 p.m. And the workshop on bidding documents for solar energy projects and the government procurement portal scheduled for Wednesday, November 9th, 2022 will now be held on Friday, November 11th, 2022 at 10 a.m. The new dates are all subject to the all clear from the Department of Meteorology.
Love the show? Want to give your support? Become a sponsor today. Call 302-2300 for our rates and packages. That's 302-2300. Become a sponsor on Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM, Nassau, Bahamas.
And welcome back to Guardian Radio and AM with C.A. Newry. And I see I have a caller on the line, but before that, I want to read the national alert that came in at November 8, 2022 at 11:39. Tropical storm Nicole residents living on Grand Bahama and Abaco Island are advised to move out of domes, trailers, and temporary structures until the passing of Tropical Storm Nicole. That's the entire national alert. But I'm just happy that the alerts come on your phone, and so that was interesting to hear that. And I'm coming to you right now, caller. I see I have a notice from Clarence Banks Association subtropical storm. The cold announcements. Official releases from the Bahamas Department of Meteorology have advised that islands in the northwest Bahamas are under hurricane watch. These islands include Grand Bahama, Abaco, Bimini, the Berry Islands, Eleuthera, New Providence, and Andros. It is further advised that hurricane conditions can be experienced in those islands beginning Tuesday evening. As a result, the CBA strongly encourages members of the public to urgently make any financial preparations as decisions around bank closures may be impending. As feasible, we ask for your support in limiting branch visits for those transactions that cannot be facilitated using our alternate delivery channels. Thank you for your understanding, and we wish you safekeeping during this time. I'm not sure exactly what they're saying with that. Anyway, let me patch the caller through who's holding there. Patch them through, producer. Go ahead, caller. Can you hear me? Caller, can you hear me there?
Hey, good day. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing today?
First of all, let me. I just want to piggyback on some of the stuff that Alan said, but and I agree with most of it. But one of the things I don't see, the Bahamas was. I mean, Nassau was strategically planned not by us or whatever. Even from the, I guess we call them the Awak or whatever, to be the populace of the Bahamas. Because if you look at it, how it's designed, how it has a natural barrier, the hurricanes didn't just start coming. They was coming before time, I guess even before we got here. But they actually, it makes sense why they choose Nassau as the habitat, to make their residence, you know what I mean? To make a safe guardian place for all of us. But now, as far as the government and what they should not do, like, for the life of me, like the Alan said just now, we can always have hurricanes. But if you drive through the streets right now, you'll see all we have is lamp pole and wires. So naturally, when a storm comes, it takes one wire to touch one and the next one, and boom, that's the power gone. And then it set off a chain reaction around the whole place. When they was digging up the road, I remember when the staying room was doing the road, Prince Charles and all that, and I keep driving past. I was like, well, why they ain't putting down a proper utility well inside there where you could run the conduit in the ground, but we'll put in pump systems as well as put all the electrical underground, where you don't have to have these high tension drives running across the up in the sky, whatever, and hurricanes can keep coming. So stuff like that, when you planning for the future and for the next 50 years and stuff, that's what you have to look at. You have to look at not only moving the government, because I really don't think that's the case. Nassau is perfect for the whole Bahamas to be able to ride out the storm, and the government, that's why it's here. That's why it's central. But we need to move it to back those days. You didn't have technology like how you have it now. So all these stuff needs to be rethought, re-strategized, like you said, and executed. Like we have all the means to do what we have to do. We just got to look at it and not just take. A lot of people talk. Like I kind of driving and trying to get my thoughts together too, but a lot of people just talk, and have all these big words and all this stuff or whatever. But I guarantee you, you get the small man like the guy used to was digging the trench or who waked the BEC for 50 years, and you spoke to them, they will tell you, well, this ain't make no sense what we doing. We building this nice road, pulling up these expensive wire and hold up on the roof, up in the sky, and we should supposed to be putting these under the ground. But nobody had ever stopped and listened to them or even ask their opinion. But they don't matter. They don't wear a suit and tie. So you all have a nice day, y'all.
No, I appreciate the contribution, man, and thanks for making time to speak to me. Even though you shouldn't be driving and texting and calling on the line, but I appreciate you calling all the same. But you're right. We need to be purposeful in terms of planning the Bahamas. We know that our Minister of Housing planned to build all kind of housing for the next 5 years, but did she take in consideration that we are in a hurricane belt, like you mentioned? Should we still be having these overlying electricity poles, or should we now be considering, because we're in a hurricane belt, to have our electricity wires underground? Like, who is thinking and considering, or like what C. Allen said, making a national hurricane response or hurricane plan? Right? That doesn't seem as if it's being considered as we move forward. And these are things that we need to be having conversation with. And particularly since we are having a threat of a tropical storm at this present time, I would encourage people to now start pressing our governments and what about this? I know you are going to have some decisions on that, and I think that these things should be considered moving forward. And I think that we now need to start asking our Minister of Housing, I'm not sure if you considered any hurricane when you're building these houses. So when she does build these houses, at least she'll have that as part of the plan. I see my last caller here. Producer Pasha, last caller, is that through? Go ahead, caller.
Hey, good morning, CA.
How you doing?
All of these things would have been addressed if we had a national development plan.
Well, we have a couple of national development plans.
Listen, CA, we waste so much money. And about 3 weeks ago, Candia did an expose and he wrote an article in the International Review when she talked to Felix Stubbs. And a lot of people thought that the PLP would have continued even though Dr. Minnis didn't really do anything with it. But we see the National Development Plan would address all of the issues, the issue of land use and everything else. And we keep going around in circles, keep asking the same old questions over and over. Unless you have a plan or roadmap, tell you where you're going, all you do is be going. You'll be Alice in Wonderland. Have a good day, buddy.
And I appreciate your call. And I always wonder, why you wait the last one to call? And I said, man, I'd want to talk to you early in the show.
I just be so busy, really. I am so busy. I said, let me just make an effort. Let me call. But when I look at the time, I say, oh, that's double.
No, I appreciate you calling, but you always be the last one. And I said, man, you don't want me to ask you any question. You don't want me to challenge you at all, but that's what it is.
I love to be challenged. I think I consider myself.
Good.
I love to be challenged. I want to challenge myself.
Good. So we'll talk again tomorrow for tomorrow's show. But this has been Guardian Radio in the AM, and we're talking hurricane. Are we prepared? Are we having the tough conversations? Are we going to challenge our government to have a national hurricane response plan that we all can buy into, that we all understand? Are we making decisions that is hurricane based, knowing that we are inside a hurricane belt, or are we just reactive? I think we're just reactive. But it's up to you now to challenge the government so that we can do some things forward. Anyway, I see you guys tomorrow. Have a wonderful day.
Guardian Radio 96.9 FM, Nassau, Bahamas.